God bless everybody. Today is January 22nd of 2021. And this video is going to go over some old content about the prophecies of that blood moon event that I was talking about over the 4th of July of 2020 and how I thought that was a double portion judgment against this country. If you follow any of my articles and videos, you know that you can find me on my eschatology page at End of Day Survival, endofdaysurvival.com. You can go down the page and you can see the 117-step sequence of events calendar of John's vision and revelation. These verses are taken directly from the Bible, step by step, from the beginning to the end. It breaks it all down so you can see what's coming. Then I also have update videos or prophecies that are happening around us in current events and other articles, and you can find them all on this page here. So if you move down the page, you realize I've got an article called 2020 Double Portion Judgment over the United States, Supreme Court Abortion Ruling, and the Trump Treaty. And I wrote this around June 30th of 2020, put a video together. And I want to go into that video so you can see how I believe this actually affected possibly this election cycle and what's coming up. So if you click on this video and you come down here, you'll notice I've got the video and everything here. You can check it out. If you click on the video, it'll take you into this chart that I'm talking about. So if you go into this video about 2 minutes into the video, I start talking about this area right in here on this chart. And this deals with today, because this section right here is Erdogan when he invaded Syria in October 9th of 2019, and we're moving into this date here of June 30th of 2021. So I want to show you how that works in what I had put out on my video originally, and how this blood moon tetrad of 2020 is going to affect, I didn't know it at the time, but it's going to affect this election cycle, I believe. This is talking about this section right in here, and this is all about today. These are today events. As you know, I talked for a while that Erdogan of Turkey, when he invaded Syria on Yom Kippur on October 9th of 2019, I believe this was the starting of the sorrows before we get into Daniel 8 and that 2300 days. But right now, we're right about in here, okay? We're right before the 4th, okay? And what do we had happen earlier this year, right after this first blood moon event? We had Trump unveil that peace for prosperity proposal that is going to be the signing of that 7-year treaty when Antichrist comes out. Now, this isn't signed yet, but it will be signed once Antichrist is on the ground. This will be that treaty. And since Trump divided the land, as we talked about in that last video about this is a judgment against our country. And so when he unveiled this is going to start a chain of events that's going to radiate and potentially have a PowerPoint over the 4th, because there's a lot going on here, and I think it's important that we go over these things. So I added the 6th junction, planetary conjunction alignment over the 4th here, so you could see that. That happens on the 4th and 5th. This all lines up. We have a blood moon, and even the moon wraps around and aligns all together. I mean, it's incredible to look at this. And I placed a video on that last video that I did about this that shows this alignment and how it all comes together. And you can go out and look at articles about this. But the new event that I think is extremely important that's coming up, and it is another judgment that is going to be placed against this country, and that is the Supreme Court has struck down Louisiana's law on abortion clinic restrictions, and so they are not upholding the weak or the innocent of life. And this is, we've been fighting Roe versus Wade for decades here, and we were hoping this John Roberts was going to be a good judge and not side with the liberal side of this equation. And we sort of sabotaged the healthcare. The way the healthcare, he was the deciding factor on that. And you got a lot of things going on there. I won't get political. I'm not a political man. I don't want to be political. But he is the deciding factor. He's not a conservative judge, I don't believe. There's a reason that they placed him in there. And, a lot of people on the right tend to say they're right, but they're not. And you can sort of see those players out there. But this is a huge judgment that's going to be placed on this country due to these abortion laws, and we're allowing the choice instead of the protection of life. So I placed that right on here, right before the 4th of July, in that big astrological alignment conjunction. And I believe that this is another PowerPoint moving into this judgment against the United States, and this power alignment on the 4th is going to be extremely important as we move forward into this 4th blood moon, which we don't know really what's coming. I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish I could tell you what's coming up here. All I can do is show you what these things are and how and why they might affect this country. And 2 things this year, and we're waiting for the 3rd strike, I think. We'll see how this works. God does like 3s, and he likes 7, so I'm guessing 3 might be a lucky number, not necessarily for this country in this respect. Well, we've had the Trump treaty at the beginning of the year, and then you had that, you had the global meltdown and Corona basically hitting us. And you know what, I went back and looked, and it was sort of funny. You had Erdogan come out on October 9th of 2019 here and invade Syria, and then what did we find right after this in October? As the earliest reports indicate, we had the coronavirus come out just shortly after this, or in October. So is that a correlation with the releasing of this first seal and horseman, that now he's releasing the next 3 horsemen with him? You've got the red horse, you've got the black horse of economic collapse and hunger and things like that, and then you have the 4th horse of death and Hades and hell. And as we get into that war with Iran coming up in the next year and a half, this is all going to domino down. The Corona thing, everybody's talking about the Corona and reopening. This is not going to happen. We're going to let everything out on the 4th. That's going to unleash a huge tsunami on this disease. People don't realize just how transmittable this is and how destructive it's going to be, and how this is a judgment for us to reassess our lives with God. It's sort of an Exodus event for us. We need to reassess our lives, reassess our repentance and our ability to, be with our Lord. It's all about the small door. Jesus is the only way through this door. So we need to understand that we have to look towards him, and that God is controlling these things. How can he not be with all these astrological events? So I just wanted to let you know that I believe the Supreme Court decision where they struck down the law in Louisiana on abortion restrictions on the clinics, and this is going to open up a wave of not only lawsuits and other things that are going to happen. This is going to open up a can of worms that this country's not ready for, because now you have the right to commit the death of another human, even though they're not born. They are viable person. So please look at these things. I think the 4th is coming. These doors are going to open up. The people are going to come out, and you're going to get a wave about a month from now. And then you're going to get fall, and you're going to get that secondary massive spike as we get into flu season, in October, November. And then you're going to get another massive spike at the end of flu season, as we always do in January, February, as we get into March. And look at that. You walk into June, and we start looking at that potential ram-goat war. I think these things are lining up, and I think we need to sort of keep an eye on that. All these different things. Also, as another thing to sort of keep an eye on, these are things that are coming up within the next year, and I just keep pointing them out so you all keep looking at them. After Gog starts this Daniel 8 war, and we start to see that destruction of Iran, the Kurds, we're going to see that Joel 1 effect, where we start to see those locusts start to devour the fortunes of Israel. And so we're going to see a major locust plague prior to, back, we're talking about the sabbatical year, the Jewish state was removed from power, and then we're going to see that Babylonian Ottoman Empire of today rise, and I believe that's going to happen in the next year and a half to 2 years. So another video that I had been working on, I talked a little bit about the election cycle. It was about a month or so after the original video I did on the double portion judgment. So I wanted to sort of show you what I had said during that time. So all these things are occurring. I think we're going to see an acceleration of, and like I say, that ball that went into my mouth, went down through my throat, had that choking effect, and then that smashing of the structure below it, and it turned into fragments of glass that turned into blood, I believe is a destruction or a potential problem for this country, because what it's sort of telling me is I believe that we're going to lose our status, similar to potentially what the Jewish people are going to lose in their Shemitah year next year in 2021, 2022, during that Shemitah year, where you see the fortunes of Israel fall and the rise of that Ottoman Empire. You're going to potentially see, especially with this destructive mode of them tearing down our history and things, this ramping up into the election cycle. And I'm so tired of people telling me that they don't want to wear a mask because it irritates their face and they breathe in carbon dioxide. You know what? It's a moral hazard issue. And if you're not willing to protect the other person, then when you stand in front of the book of life and you have to answer for your decisions while we're in to the sorrows and the birth pains, and God's warning us that we need to pay attention to all these things, that we should really, really pay attention to these things. I'm going to move forward just a little bit in the video to the next part of the video that makes sense with the election cycle part. So we're going to start to see this ramping up, as I've explained on a number of my videos out there. So I just wanted to go over some of these things. I do see a ramping up. I see a potential catastrophe in the next few months occurring in this nation as we get into an election cycle, and we see the progressive basically destroy this country and rip our history and our monuments down as they're trying to get a change in the method of our leadership. And I go back to, I believe that we will see Trump re-elected. If you go back, now we go back to the 100-year Ottoman destruction of when we started to see World War I finished and the Ottoman Empire dissolved. And if you look at that cycle of presidents, we saw Woodrow Wilson as the president back in 1916. He had done 2 terms, and then he couldn't run a 3rd term, so we had an elected Republican come in. And so I'm hoping that history repeats itself and we don't get a Joe Biden as a president, because if you get a Joe Biden as president, you might as well have Nancy Pelosi as your president, because she pulls his strings, and she will then become the Speaker of the House, and she will be actually the president, and Biden will just be the puppet at that point. But I don't want to get too political, and you may agree or disagree with that view. But Biden came out the other day and started to praise the Islamic communities and how we had to embrace these communities. So if you believe in an antichrist, radical Islamic-based system, I'm guessing that you probably don't want to vote for this guy. So in reality, I do believe Trump did win. He did get 11 million more votes than he did in 2016. I do believe the election was rigged, and I believe there wasn't a process to determine whether it was a legitimate election. So in reality, Trump probably did win, and that's an issue in itself. I've thought about this quite a bit. What happens when a nation doesn't really select a leader, and it's either taken either through fraud in this case, or either my military. In this case, we didn't ask for this leader, I don't think, and so I don't know how that equates into God's world. Hopefully he'll have mercy upon us and realize that the population didn't really ask for this, but it's just part of his plan, and you got to realize that God's in control here. And that's the main thing we need to understand. So, is this election cycle a problem? Did we, through the signing of the treaty, through the upholding of abortion, through allowing gay marriage and other types of abominations in God's eyes, this is not my, it's not how I look at it through God's eyes, and as a Christian, I have to hold up his standards. So that's how I look at this. And so in his eyes, we've been creating abominations for over 70 years in this country. You would have to go back to almost Leave It to Beaver to get back to a time where this country went to church and we believed in God, and we said, allegiance in the schools, and we didn't teach liberal ideas to our children. So once we got out of the 50s, things started to radically change, and you've seen a real ramping up since 9/11. And that's a pretty amazing thing that after 9/11, 20 years later, we are now allowing our government to be radicalized through Muslims and a radical ideology called Marxism. So I don't know, excuse me, I don't know if Trump has the magic bullet to get in. There's that one last prophecy out there about March 4th and how through the insurrection thing, he's somehow going to take back the government through the military. That's pretty thin at this point, and I don't work in that kind of prophecy very well. It's just something I want to bring to your attention, because this is what people are talking about out there, and you need to understand that. I look at it this way: if God wanted to change this election this very second, he could. Will he? I don't know. Maybe after 70 years, we probably brought this judgment upon us, and we, as a country, deserve what we are getting through the pornography and all the other things that we promote to the world. and not only in our internal country alone, but we promote these things. We are the leader of the world. People do look at us from abroad, and our actions do matter here. So, excuse me. God bless you. Find the open door. Find the narrow door. Find Jesus. Repent. Open up the skeletons in the closet. Expose everything to Him so that when you stand in front of the book of life, you've already had this conversation.